Hello and welcome to the GameDay Podcast from talkSPORT, the ultimate review of all the Premier League action from the weekend. With me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT's football correspondent Alex Crook and talkSPORT broadcaster Kweku Afari. Liverpool beat Manchester City to rein in the champions and give Arsenal a bit of breathing space at the top of the Premier League. Kepa keeps Chelsea in the game at Villa as the wins mount up for Graham Potter. And Saturday is nominated as the most forgettable day in Premier League history, but we will still give it due attention on the GameDay Podcast from talkSPORT. Okay, so Saturday was a little bit stodgy, but Sunday was scintillating. Crook famously said last week that he was absolutely convinced that Manchester United would finish above Liverpool. And I feel like in the absence of Darren Lewis, who's not with us this morning, that it's important for me to play the Liverpool card here. How you feeling about that call now, fella?
Not as confident. I expected Liverpool not to beat Manchester City, so that was a bit of a spanner in the works. But listen, United are still a work in progress. It's going to take a bit of time, and I don't think one victory necessarily means that Liverpool are back to their best. Let's see if they can back it up.
That wasn't the question. The question was, how do you feel about your call? Are you sweating nervously? Are you going to backtrack famously like you do within 20, 30 seconds and suggest that actually Liverpool are more likely to finish above Manchester United?
No, I'll stick with my call. Let's see how Liverpool get on in the next few weeks.
Okay, Kweku, how are you?
I'm
get involved when you like, by the way. You can ignore him. He's sore. Almost as sore as Kepa's hands, actually.
I kind of feel for Crookie because it's always tough for Man United fans when Liverpool play against City, having to root for your City rivals to beat Liverpool. So yeah, I do feel for you. I did feel for you the other day, Crookie, because rooting for Man City must not be pleasant. But yeah, good result for Chelsea. Obviously, big Chelsea fan, and it's onwards and upwards for Graham Potter at Chelsea.
It certainly is. Right, we'll start with Liverpool against Manchester City. Slow start to the game, but it burst into life.
As indeed, Liverpool 1, Manchester City 0, all courtesy of Mo Salah's goal on the 76th minute.
On a normal day, you should not even try against City. You can play a normal game against them and hope that you get something for it. You have to play to your limits. So it was a top performance from all the boys.
We had 4 or 5 or 6 chances or 7 chances in Anfield in front of the keeper. So they make a transition. So it was a tight game, as always have been. And at the end, one mistake we commit.
I quite enjoyed, Crook, the crescendo that led to Klopp being sent off towards the end. The atmosphere electric towards the finale of the game. The goal is a little bit basic. It comes from a City free kick. The defending's really poor from Cancelo. And without wanting to pick on you again, is he still their player of the year in reference to Thursday's poll?
Do you know what? I thought that as soon as I saw the mistake. It was uncharacteristic, though, wasn't it? He just got too tight. Brilliant turn from Salah. And having missed the first chance from a very similar situation, Darren Ambrose sat next to me on the boot room, said, he's got to dink this one. He's got to dink it. And he did. And it was an excellent finish. And really picking up where he left off against Rangers. But I don't think we should make light of the Jurgen Klopp sending off. And here's the reason why. We've covered it a lot on talkSPORT, the abuse and the insults and the physical attacks that referees at grassroots level have had to suffer. This was a weekend when youth football in Merseyside was cancelled as a protest against those assaults on officials. And I don't think it's befitting for a manager of the stature of Jurgen Klopp to be screaming in the face of an assistant referee. And I think he let himself down.
Yeah, I totally concur with that. I think it's a real shame that the indiscipline that I think sort of has started to creep into the technical areas has started to become almost part of the theatre. The managers feel as if they've got to get involved. They've got to make themselves look as if they're protesting to the fans. They're playing to the gallery almost. You know, Arteta does it quite a lot. Jesse Marsch does it a lot. Klopp's doing it. Guardiola was definitely playing to the gallery after the Haaland goal was disallowed. But it is a massive, massive win. Did Liverpool deserve it, Kweku? And how good is it for the Premier League as a whole that Manchester City have been finally beaten?
Yeah, I think it was a well-deserved win for Liverpool. I was on record saying that I thought they were going to get a hiding. And when I saw the starting lineup, it was perplexing that these teams were on the same level last season. Obviously, Man City won the title on the final day if you just looked at the starting lineups. But Liverpool got their tactics perfect on the night. And obviously, Anfield's a different prospect under the lights as well. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but the tension was palpable in the atmosphere. You just felt it. And I can tell the City felt it as well. Like you say, Pep was getting engaged with the fans. And obviously, Klopp, he's an emotional manager, and it wasn't necessarily right for him to berate the officials like that. But you could tell the atmosphere, you could tell what it meant to Liverpool as well. So I think it was more good Liverpool than bad City. But City didn't get their tactics right. And like you said, the defending for the Salah goal was unforgivable. I don't engage in whataboutisms, but if that was Trent Alexander-Arnold who made that mistake, it'd be all over the back pages. And despite the fact that Cancella's been very, very good going forward, that was unacceptable defending.
Yeah, it was poor defending from Cancelo, but it's a rare blip, whereas Trent Alexander-Arnold has made several over the course of the season, which is why, probably, even if he was in good enough shape to be a part of the matchday squad yesterday, they decided to play Milner at right back and maybe just be a little bit more conservative yesterday, which probably played into their hands. How important is it for Salah to strike in a game as big as that and be the victory clincher in such a huge match, Crook, bearing in mind the 6 months that he's had?
I think it's huge because there has been a criticism levelled at Salah, even when he was at his pomp, that he's a bit of a flat track bully. He doesn't necessarily come up with the goods in the biggest games. So I think for him to be the match winner is massive for his season. And actually, you're right, he's not been at his best for the past 6 months, but he has still been coming up with goal contributions in terms of assists and that hat-trick that he got in the midweek in the Champions League. And I expect Salah now to go on a decent run. And actually, you look at the World Cup that's coming up, we wonder how that's going to affect certain players' form. Obviously, he was devastated that Egypt didn't qualify, but I think long-term for Liverpool, that will probably be a good thing, because when everybody else is coming back tired after their international exploits, he's got a few weeks just to recharge and improve his match sharpness. I think he'll have a really good second half of the season.
Are we over-egging this whole World Cup thing? You know, you're only going to be tired if you've actually gone over there and played a load of games. I mean, you know, the way things are going at the moment, England are only going to be there for about a week and a half, so they might all get a rather nice rest on the back of it. But Salah and Haaland, both of them not going to the World Cup, so they'll be well refreshed and zen by the time that Boxing Day comes around. Look, Robertson returning is really important for them because he had a great chance actually to score in the first half. I do think that this game needed to go in Liverpool's direction for the league, really. That Arsenal obviously have been playing very, very well. I don't expect them to win the league, but they're in a great position to take control of it right now. But it is a pivotal moment for Manchester City, because all of a sudden, and for the rest of the league, really, all of a sudden they're sort of, they are beatable. They aren't invincible, which is key if we're going to have a competitive Premier League, Kweku.
Definitely. And Man City have looked fallible this season. We saw it against Copenhagen midweek, saw it against Newcastle, that thrilling 3-3 draw. And Aston Villa, a team who've been struggling, managed to get a draw against them. So they have been fallible this season. They're not these invincible giants that people made them out to be. They have got some issues, and I think you saw them last night in regards to their defensively. Sometimes they can be got at. And I think that if you set yourself up, or you set your team up like Jurgen Klopp did with Liverpool, then there are positions to exploit the City team. Yeah. And like you said, it was good for the league because they are the clear favourites. They have got the best team. They've got the best squad. They've got the best manager, in my opinion. So for Liverpool to get a result at Anfield in a game that's full of drama, full of tension and full of quality was important for the Premier League, because I think it gives everybody else a fighting chance in terms of the title race.
Newcastle sort of set the blueprint, didn't they? If you attack Manchester City, you can cause them problems. So we know that there are vulnerabilities there. Let's talk about Anthony Taylor, because he let quite a lot go during the game. A lot of people think that's good. Some people complaining about it. I imagine if you're a Liverpool fan and you weren't happy about one or two of the tackles, or the tackle that led to a big chance in the first half, you'd be upset about that. If you're a Manchester City fan, you're still annoyed about the fact that Haaland was penalised for a foul in the build-up to the Foden goal. So that one didn't count. How did we feel about that, Crook? We felt sort of good about the fact that he was allowing the game to
No,
fly?
I'm not against that. I think that's the right way to referee these big juggernaut clashes, but listen, it was a bad weekend for officiating. We're going to come on to it in the individual games. I actually think probably it was the right call to disallow the Manchester City goal. I think there was enough contact between Haaland and the Liverpool player for that to be ruled out for a foul.
Okay, well, congratulations to Liverpool. They did win the game. Manchester City just nuked it a little bit for a week. I'm sure they'll come roaring back to life in midweek. Double delight for Arsenal, because they stretched their lead at the top of the table to 4 points.
Leeds United 0, Arsenal 1. Courtesy of Bukayo Saka's fourth goal in a week.
Well, incredible. I think with these numbers, obviously, you have to be out there and especially understanding how difficult it is to win every game in this league.
And they weren't at their best, but is that a sign of a good team that they've come away from Ellen Road with 3 points, Kweku.
Yeah, it was a hostile atmosphere as well, and it's a place that big teams struggle. Being a Chelsea fan, I saw the performance we put out at Ellen Road, and it wasn't impressive. So for Arsenal to get that result in those circumstances, where it was a game, for being completely honest, at least probably deserved to get something out of, at least a point. And decisions also went Arsenal's way as well. It's huge for Mikel Arteta and this Arsenal team, who go clear at the top of the Premier League table. I know it feels like we're only at the beginning of the season, but we are a quarter of the way through now. And this is the real Arsenal. And there was a stat that the last 4 teams to win 9 out of the first 10 games will have gone on to win the Premier League title. And I know that Arsenal fans want to maybe keep the expectations a little bit lower than other fans of other teams, but Arsenal are well and truly in this title race. And if they can continue this form in what has been a difficult October for them already, then there's no reason why, when the World Cup rolls around, they shouldn't be in the preeminent position to go on and win this title. Obviously, like we said, Man City are the clear favourites, but Arsenal have got all the tools, they've got the right manager, and they've got the players who've got the belief now. So fair play to Arsenal. I think they got very lucky in terms of some of the decisions, but it's a big away win for them.
Lucky? I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable, some of the stuff that happened in this game. Good job they got VAR working. First of all, it was delayed for about 20 minutes because there was a power surge and a TV truck which took out the big screen and then obviously took out VAR as well. And how dare we even think about continuing without VAR nowadays? So we had to not rely on the whistle. Cannot be the sole arbiter of the game. There needs to be lots of television screens in order to make sure that we're getting those decisions absolutely wrong. As a result, they did need it to give Bamford a penalty, which he then missed, to give Gabriel a red card in the final minute, which was then overturned. It was all just madness, really. And it sort of started with Rodrigo's pass for Saka's first goal. 4 goals, 4 assists in the last 7 games from Saka now. Quiet start to the season, but he's burst into life, Crook.
Yeah, and I said on Sunday night on the boot room that he needs to be in the starting lineup for England at the World Cup if he can maintain this form. And it's not just about the goals and assists, actually. I see a young player there still at the relatively fledgling stage of his career who's developed real leadership qualities. And you go back to the Euros and the players who miss penalties, I think it's definitely had an effect on the form of Marcus Rashford. For Saka, it's gone the other way. And I think that shows just how strong a character that he is, that he's managed to bounce back from that and hit new heights. I think Martin Ødegaard has been a bit of an unsung hero in terms of non-Arsenal fans. Arsenal fans know how good he is. I have to admit, I wasn't that convinced by the signing. He's been absolutely terrific as well. And again, has shown those leadership qualities. But you're right. Thank heavens that the VAR was working. How the on-field official missed the handball for the Bamford penalty that he put wide is absolutely beyond me. He's in the perfect position. How you don't see that and just give a penalty. And I think this is a problem, by the way. VAR is taking a lot of kicking, but I think the on-field referees need to take far more responsibility than they are. He needs to point to the spot. He shouldn't need his pal in the television studio telling him that's a penalty. It's clear for everybody to see.
What about the Bamford goal that was disallowed, Kweku, just after half-time? Where was the foul? Was there enough of a foul there to rule out that goal?
I don't think so, and that just speaks to the luck that Arsenal had on the day. It wasn't, and you can see why Jesse March was apoplectic and Leeds fans were up in arms, because I don't think there was enough of a foul. And speaking about Gabriel, I think he's a player that you need to keep an eye on, because he's going to cost Arsenal going forward. He almost cost them yesterday. And with the games I've seen, especially in the big games, we saw the mistake in the North London derby. We saw it last season when they played against Man City and he got himself sent off. He's a player that needs to be watched. But again, Leeds, going back to the point, Leeds were unlucky with that disallowed goal. And I know that missing a penalty can't be counted as unlucky, but unlucky to not put that away. Saka's goal was almost out of nowhere, and Leeds had multiple chances to get something out of the game in the second half. Arsenal
have won 9 of their first 10 Premier League games of the season. As Kweku said, the last 4 teams to do that have gone on to win the title. One word answer, please. Will they? Crook?
No.
Kweku?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Manchester United 0, Newcastle United 0. Battle for 6 ends in stalemate.
It's finished here. Manchester United 0, Newcastle 0. I don't think anybody deserved to win the game today.
I think the hallmark of a good team is being hard to beat, and I just felt we were a little bit off today with the ball.
Disappointed with the result, but I'm happy with the performance.
It wasn't a great game. I was sat there at Old Trafford presenting the Sunday session from there. And I was furious afterwards about Rashford missing those chances because everyone, including Crook, was been telling me how great he is now and he's scoring all these wonderful goals. If he was a proper killer, if he was a proper striker that puts those chances away, that is 2-0, finished, done.
I think you've been a bit harsh after the first one. I think the touch taking it around the keeper was a bit heavy. It made the angle difficult. Fred's missed a sitter. Fred's got a score. He's 6 yards out. It's an open goal, and he's put it wide. I know he's under pressure from the Newcastle defender. The second one is more unforgivable. That's a free header right in front of goal. I think he was trying to be too clever, too precise. Just get it on target, and you're very unlucky if you don't score from there. And I guess you can understand why Cristiano Ronaldo reacted so angrily and so frustratedly when he was taken off, because let's be honest, if that's Ronaldo in that situation and not Marcus Rashford, United win the game 1-0. And I thought it was a negative move from Erik ten Hag because Newcastle came with a game plan. They came to frustrate. I think they were quite happy with a point. Never really looked like winning the game apart from the double Joe Linton woodwork incident in the first half. He wouldn't do that again if he tried 1,000 times, by the way. But I don't think you needed, at that stage of the game, late on, two defensive midfielders. He should have taken off Fred. Absolutely the right thing to bring on Rashford and try and stretch that back line and go for broke. I think it's 2 points drop for United. Having said that, defensively and with Casemiro midfield, they look so much more solid, and at least they're finally being coached properly.
VAR at the forefront again. There was an incident involving Jadon Sancho. I understand why people don't want to give this as a penalty because Jadon Sancho flings himself into the air like he has been taken out from row Z by a sniper, right? Okay, so he over-eggs the pudding, but he was hit. He did get contact inside the penalty area. And I wonder whether or not his theatrics have ruled out the possibility of him being given the penalty. But Ronaldo's goal from the Newcastle free kick, which I thought was taken, could have stood, couldn't it?
Yeah. It could have. I think Newcastle were given life with that one. Obviously, the referee's hand is up in the air, so it indicates that he was waiting for it to be kicked. But I think Ronaldo's being smart, he's being sharp, and he's seen that the defenders knocked it back. And you can see the reaction. Sometimes with these kind of incidents, you look at the players on your opposition team to see whether it should have not been given or whether it should have been given. And Nick Pope looked a little bit sheepish. So I feel like that goal could have stood. Obviously, it's Ronaldo being smart and clever. United can maybe have some questions about why it wasn't given, but again, this has not been a great weekend or great day for referees or VAR.
Crook, he taps it into Cher, and then Cher taps it to Pope, and then Ronaldo waits, looks. I think the referee's not in control of the situation because he's not looking at what's just happened. He doesn't know that Cher's tapped the ball. What were you thinking at the time?
Well, it took me by surprise. I was commentating the game and I wasn't completely sure what was going on either, to be honest. I was doing it from the studio.
Actually watching the screen or were you texting or something?
No, I was doing it from the studio, and obviously, the cameraman maybe wasn't completely focused on the incident. Darren Ambrose, as a former player, was convinced that he had taken the free kick. I think ultimately only Fabian Schär knows the answer to that question. I can understand the argument that he's taken the free kick. I can understand the counter-argument that he is just rolling it back to the keeper to make sure it's taken from the proper position. As I say, only Schär knows. I think it would have been a difficult one for the referee to give because you can't prove it conclusively either way.
66 minutes on the clock. Chelsea have doubled their lead. Mason Mount with that second goal. What a sublime strike it was.
It's not easy in the Premier League to continually score an assist, but he's a fantastic player and he's got the quality.
When you give them moments in the game like we have done for the first goal and the second goal, world-class players can punish it.
Mount at the double. Chelsea win a fifth game in a row. Good performance from Villa, actually, especially in the first half. But Gerrard under pressure still. The Villa fans are not having him at all. First of all, let's talk about Kepa, because he did brilliantly in that first 45 minutes. He made one of the saves of the season from Danny Ings. He pulled off several brilliant stops. How has he rebuilt his career?
I just believe that when you look at Kepa, and obviously we remember his first season at Chelsea and the incident in the League Cup final with Mauricio Sarri, and then his form kind of tailed off completely off the back of that, and it looked like his Chelsea career was over. But it's patience. I think patience is the key word. Obviously, Chelsea brought in Mendy. Mendy was incredible in his first season and a half of Chelsea. But again, it's maybe slipped into a little bit of complacency over the last few months, and his form has not been great. When Potter came in, Mendy was injured. Perfect excuse to start Kepa, and Kepa's taken his chance. But I feel like the thing that underlines Kepa's resurgence and redemption arc is patience. He's been happy to wait. Obviously, he was linked with a move away in the summer. He stayed. We know about the hefty price tag that looms over his head consistently. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to repay that. But if he continues with performances like this and Chelsea continue to roll and he can establish himself as Chelsea's number one, then there is a future at Chelsea for Kepa, because he is way more proficient with the ball at his feet than Edouard Mendy. And like we saw yesterday, he's a great shot stopper on his day.
Listen, I think Ben Roberts deserves a bit of credit, actually. The new goalkeeping coach who followed Graham Potter from Brighton. I know what an impact he had down the South Coast in turning Robert Sanchez from a bit of a journeyman into a Premier League number one. I don't think it's a coincidence. And I think you can see that whatever they're doing in training has really restored Kepa's fragile confidence. And I know Graham Potter has come out and said, I've not got a number one. I think he has. And I think at the moment, Kepa is justifying that decision.
Yep, I do feel sorry for Steven Gerrard in a way. 18 attempts to 8 on goal in that match, and he came out afterwards and he said, "Oh, good performance, blah blah blah." But the fans aren't having him, are they? They're still a little bit sort of anti-Gerrard. They want him removed. They looked a little bit better, I think, without Coutinho in the team. Obviously, he's just not up to it anymore. I'm sorry, 17 million quid might have been a bargain, but it was a bargain that didn't work out. The truth is that unless they start putting points on the board quickly, they're going to find themselves in relegation trouble, because they've actually got some tough fixtures upcoming, and they're playing a lot of the top teams or top half teams over the course of the next few weeks prior to the World Cup, and they are sitting rather precariously above the relegation zone. What does the future hold for him, Crook? What's his job security situation, do you think?
Fragile. We spoke about it last week. I think at the moment he still has a big boardroom ally in Christian Purslow, but the owners are a little bit concerned about the direction of travel. He's coming up for his 1 year anniversary. Whether he will make that 1 year anniversary, I think is still open to conjecture. I don't think they've really improved under him. The signings, by and large, haven't been great. And I think it's difficult, and we'll talk about Ralph Hasenhüttl later, when the fans decide that you're not for them and the atmosphere in the stadium becomes a bit toxic. I think it's difficult for any manager to turn that scenario around. And I think inevitably the owners will start to listen to the vocal, because starts as a minority, then becomes a majority. I think he's really up against it, Gerrard.
Mason Mount at the double, returned to top form since Graham Potter arrived. He was brilliant in the games against AC Milan. He was terrific on Saturday as well. The free kick is outstanding. He takes advantage of a Mings mistake for the first one. But he's integral to Chelsea. Chelsea play just much better when Mason Mount is on top form, Kweku.
Yeah, and I really, really rate the way that he's come back or bounced back at the beginning of the season. He's an incredible player. But what I will say is, at the beginning of this season and also the international break, he wasn't Southgate's boy. He wasn't starting for England. So the fact that he's scored for England and now he's scoring for Chelsea and creating as well, I think it bodes well for Chelsea. And he's the only player to start every game since outfield player anyway, to start every game since Potter's come in. And he's repaying his manager's faith. Mason Mount is a world-class player, or on his way to becoming a world-class player. He does everything for Chelsea. And if he can add those finishing touches to his game in terms of goals and assists, then we're going to have a complete forward or complete hybrid midfielder / forward, because Mason Mount is everything. I might be a bit biased.
He would have more assists if people converted the chances he creates for them. He created more big chances than almost anyone in the Premier League last season, but there was no one there to stick them away. His stats would be a lot better if they had a number 9. They do now have one. He scored 2 goals at the weekend. Chilwell, lucky not to see red for a tackle. Kweku, quickly.
Yeah, I do. It's very, very rash from Ben Chilwell. I think sometimes in elements of his game, you're seeing the rust.
Everyone has to go about Declan Rice. Doesn't score enough goals. He's just scored an absolute banger here. Southampton 1, West Ham 1.
I mean, crikey. When you talk about refereeing errors, when you talk about problems with VAR, it doesn't get much worse than the performance on Sunday by the VAR Simon Hooper and the referee Peter Banks. Walker Peters with the most blatant foul throw you have ever seen in the build-up to Perraud's opener for Saints. The referee standing in front of Jared Bowen so that he can't received the ball, almost blocking him like an NFL defensive lineman. I mean, what on earth is going on here? How was that goal not overturned, Kweku?
Sam, you say you won't see a worse VAR referee performance. I think we did see one, and that was last week, another game involving West Ham versus Fulham, where maybe all three of West Ham's goals could have been chalked off. It was laughable. It was laughable that the goal could have stood, Southampton's goal could have stood, and you saw how angry David Moyes was. He did quite well to restrain himself because, like you say, the referees clearly blocked off Jarrod Bowen.
Well, listen, we had David Moyes live on the Sunday session yesterday, and he was furious. And I think he had every right to be, Crook.
Yeah, you can understand his frustration. You know, I mean, the incident with Jarrod Bowen is no different than if the ball accidentally hits the referee. The rule is that you have to stop play and bounce the ball back to whoever was in possession. I think common sense, he should have done the same thing there. He clearly had a big impact in the goal. West Ham should be winning this game, and they would 9 times out of 10. So, yeah, I think he's right to be agitated. And again, it's another example of just rank bad decision-making from an official.
But it was a long overdue goal for Declan Rice, who did hit the target with a brilliant effort. That was a really good goal to watch. Southampton lost 4 in a row leading into this game. How much time does this buy Ralph Hasenhüttl, Alex?
Well, we'll get the Bournemouth game in midweek, I think. But I do think we're entering win or bust territory now for Ralph Hasenhüttl. Diligence is being done behind the scenes by Southampton, as any good football club should, in terms of some kind of succession plan. But again, I think if you look at social media, Ralph Out was trending after the game. They're aware that he's struggling in the eyes of the Southampton supporters. And this is a difficult trip along the south coast. Bournemouth unbeaten in 6. And I think all of the pressure is on Hasenhüttl and on Southampton. He shuffled it around a bit yesterday. Maitland-Niles came in and probably had his best game in a Southampton shirt, but they need a lot more. Listen, they spent £70 million in the summer, largely on young players. They didn't sign a striker, and that's a problem because, with the greatest respect in the world, is Shea Adams going to get 15 goals in the Premier League this season? Is he even going to get 10? Probably not. And James Ward-Prowse is playing badly as well, by the way. If there weren't 28 places available on the plane for Qatar, I'm not sure that his form warrants an England call-up for the World Cup at the moment.
Well, there's not. There's only 26, so he might not make it.
There you go.
Saturday was one of those days where you turn on Match of the Day and you think, what are they going to choose first here? Because it was not a very good day, was it? Wolves 1, Forest 0. Leicester versus Palace. I went to that game. That's an hour and a half I'll never get back. Spurs 2, Everton 0. The best game, arguably, was the game down at Craven Cottage.
That signals the referee's whistle for the end of the match, and it's all square. Gary O'Neill is now 6 unbeaten as Bournemouth manager.
Delighted with the boys. Yeah, just disappointed. I think that's 6 or 7 VAR checks we've had now, and we've had 0 go our way so far.
Let's start there. Because everyone's seemingly waiting for Bournemouth to start losing. But another very good result for Gary O'Neill, who's done an excellent job and cannot be ignored in terms of contenders for the permanent role. We've spoken about that a lot, so we don't need to go into that as well. Since their 9-0 loss to Liverpool, they are the only unbeaten team in the league, Bournemouth, which is an impressive result. The key thing has been moving Billing a little bit higher up the pitch. And I must say, that first goal from Dominic Solanke was a brilliant team goal, Crook.
Yeah, and I'll claim a bit of credit for Dominic Solanke's goal and assist, because I did a big piece for one of the papers on Saturday morning pointing out his goal-scoring record in the Premier League, 5 in 70 before Saturday. To be fair, it was in with some Gary O'Neill quotes suggesting there's a lot more to Dominic Solanke's game than just scoring, and he's right. He's become a focal point. He holds the ball up really well. I think in his time away from the Premier League, not only did he add goals, but he became a better all-round number 9. That combination play with Billing has been key to their success this season. So I'm only tongue-in-cheek saying that I motivated him by pointing out.
Sorry, so you're claiming credit because you wrote an article in a paper, which you basically, by the way, have sort of taken yourself out of now. You're no longer a nasty newspaper journalist, you call yourself. But now you are again this weekend. And you pointed out that he had a bad goal-scoring record. And you think he got that paper, pinned it up on the dressing room wall and decided to read it, be inspired by it, thought, I'll prove that Alex Crook wrong. Did you do it under your own name or did you do it under a fake name?
No, it was under my own name. So, yeah.
All right, okay, that makes a change.
But before we bring Kweku in, can we just talk again about VAR? Bournemouth very unhappy with the award of a penalty. They feel like Alexander Mitrovic initiated the contact. All right, maybe you could say that Jefferson Lerma fell for it. But at the other end, Fredericks has had his arm pulled away. He goes down in the box. How that's not a spot kick? And they're building up a catalogue here, Bournemouth. Obviously, decisions go for you, they go against you. There are a lot of VAR calls that have gone against Bournemouth already this season. They feel hard done by.
Yeah, and that's also another job that he does, as well as being a nasty newspaper journalist, an opinionated podcast verbalizer. He's also the Bournemouth and Southampton press officer, depending on what day it happens to be. And he actually texted me on Saturday saying, "Don't accuse me of being the Bournemouth press officer, but they're not happy with that penalty." I actually think...
So, Crookie, what are you going to do midweek when Bournemouth play against Southampton?
I'll be firmly on the fence.
Kweku. It depends who wins. Let's talk about that Fredericks pullback, because that was a penalty, wasn't it?
It was a penalty. And again, the officials and VAR not covering themselves with glory. Fulham's bubble seems to have burst in terms of the beginning of the season. Obviously, they started like a house on fire. And it's kind of slowed down a little bit. And I don't want to say that Marco Silva and Fulham need to be looking over their shoulder going into the latter stages of the season. But when I see the way they play and the way they can see goals and the way they go about their business, I can see that if they get an injury to Mitrovic and if they sustain injuries to other key players in their team, they could be struggles this season. I think they need to get back onto a winning track as soon as possible. If they want to avoid being in the scrap for relegation towards the back end of the season.
They'll be involved in the scrap. Yeah, they're 4 points away from the relegation zone right now. They're not playing particularly well. I think, they've lost 5 of the last 8 games.
Tottenham 2, Everton 0 this game, and this result has been put to bed by Pierre-Emile Højbjerg.
Progressed a lot, and I think that's a positive for us, but yeah, the harsh realities of football in the last 2.
We are showing that we are a team that is difficult to play against.
They're brilliant in terms of the fact that they've had their best ever start to a Premier League season, which is, cracking in terms of points, but it doesn't feel like that when you sit there and watch them. I mean, they really are boring, aren't they?
But this is what you get from Antonio Conte. When Chelsea won the league under his management, was it swashbuckling football? I'm not sure it was. I do wonder what Tottenham fans really want. This is a team who've been starved of success. They've made no impression in the football world in my lifetime. If they end up winning the Premier League title, but they do it in a dull way, are they really going to complain about the style of football? Come on.
So let me ask you this question. Are you now backtracking on the fact that you wanted Antonio Conte as the manager of Manchester United?
No, I'm not at all, because I want to see winning football. Yes, you want to see your team play with style if possible, but first and foremost, it's about getting results and winning games, and they're doing that. You've said it, best ever start to a Premier League season. Harry Kane's had a bit of stick. He scored in 5 successive Premier League games for the first time in his career. Højbjerg has been brilliant in midfield, keeping Yves Bissouma out the team. Defensively, they look organised. They look like a team who aren't going to give away many chances. I think it's madness that Spurs fans are moaning.
Touching on what Crook said in terms of Tottenham, it's like they've done the deal with the devil, really. And if it comes or it ends in trophies, then fair play. But in terms of objectively just watching Spurs play, it's enough to put me to sleep. It's not great football. And despite the fact that Antonio Conte maybe employed the similar types of football when he won the league with Chelsea, they were way more exciting than this Spurs side, who are the most boring team to watch in the Premier League.
I think one of the big problems they've got is that they don't take many games away from teams. So they're always on the precipice of actually throwing it away. Towards the end of that game, you've got to remember, it was 1-0 till the 86th minute. So it was a marginal victory. So I don't know, I'm not wholly convinced just yet that it's all going to end with a trophy on the mantelpiece for Daniel Levy and for Antonio Conte. But look, they look a little bit more reliable than they have done for a number of years. Wolves 1, Forest 0. Oh dear, what's the most interesting thing about this game?
It's Ruben Neves who takes it and scores, and they have the first goal of this game.
I think that if you can't get motivated as a professional player, you shouldn't be doing it. But that gives us a little bit more, gives us an edge, I think, point something like that out.
What about the Nottingham Forest social media team almost goading Wolves with a post about it? Very silly. Egg on your face, especially when you're not doing very well. You've sacked your head of recruitment. Things are not looking great. And then you go and goad the team that beat you 1-0 in a drab game. Doesn't look great.
Yeah, so they did put out a post before the match, didn't they? Which was a picture of one of their players surrounded by actual Wolves and the words "playtime" over the top of it. I don't really understand that. It was cuddling the Wolves like it was like, I'm going to tame them. I'm not necessarily sure that was ever in the offing. Bit of a gamble, really. Could Mick Beale leave Queen's Park Rangers and go to Wolverhampton Wanderers, as Crook, you broke yesterday? Is that possible?
I think it's very possible. I think the caretaker management will stay in charge for their game in midweek. I think Wolves are labouring over this a little bit. Obviously, there's big interest from Nuno Espirito Santo that's being driven by George Mendes to come back to the football club. But I was told over the weekend it's more likely now that it will be a non-Mendes client who takes the job, which obviously would be a change of tact. I think they like the idea of appointing a young, up-and-coming British head coach, which is why they spoke to Rob Edwards. I don't think he'll get the job. There are a couple of other candidates still on the short list, but I think by beating Forest, they feel that there isn't such a dramatic rush, so I don't think much will change between now and the weekend. It's a gamble on Mick Beale, isn't it? He's only had 15 games as a frontline manager in the Championship. He was Steven Gerrard's assistant, obviously, and I think Gerrard has struggled without him by his side. So I'd be intrigued to see how that works out.
The full-time whistle is met with a smattering of boos.
It's clearly not where we want to be in that area of the field. And these players they're good guys who are working very hard to turn it around. So over the course of the season, I believe we'll do that.
Oh, God, it was so boring. It was so bad. Rodgers at one stage appeared to say that it was too hot. It's October. If it's too hot for James Maddison in Leicester in October, what's it going to be like going to the World Cup in Qatar? It's probably not a good idea. He also said to me afterwards, we were talking for ages, right? And he said, he kept saying that the owners might have to make a difficult decision. And I was like, are you trying to tell them that they should sack you? Is it a foregone conclusion that they're going to dismiss you? He's like, no. But it was a very odd thing to say. I almost feel now as if it's like a little bit like, hold on a second. Is there any chance that someone could just put this situation out of its misery, make the change, and let's just move on? He clearly doesn't want to be there for whatever reason. He's fallen out with them. He hasn't had the investment. He doesn't think he's going to achieve what he wants to achieve. It's probably best that he just goes on and does something else and gets somebody who's prepared to work with no money to shape what is a reasonably good squad of players. It's not a bad squad of players into a good team.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the Wolves situation, and I think one of the reasons that they've dragged their heels is because they had both Steve Cooper and Brendan Rodgers on their list of potential appointments before that. Well, we called it El Sacico, that Leicester victory over Forest. Brendan Rodgers stays in the job. Steve Cooper gets a new contract. It wouldn't surprise me if Leicester were to pull the trigger on Brendan Rodgers, if he is someone that Wolves do want to speak to. But you're right, he doesn't want to be there anymore. I think he is very unhappy about the lack of investment in the summer. The squad is not equipped for him to do what he's done in previous seasons. And every game that passes, it looks worse on him. This is a manager who was touting himself for Manchester United not that long ago. He's miles off that now.
Leicester host Leeds on Thursday. Will he be in a job if they lose that game, Kweku?
It's tough. His job's made a lot tougher with the fact that James Maddison's going to be missing. It's a game that they do need to win. I think he still will be in the job. It's so interesting because it does seem from the outside looking in like he is ready to go. I don't know how expensive it will be to get rid of Brendan Rodgers.
A lot.
But I feel like for both parties moving forward, the best thing is separation. So if they lose against Leeds, I think his job will be in jeopardy. But I don't know if the Leicester owners have got the facilities or the finances to actually sack Brendan Rodgers. So it's up in the air. It's an interesting situation. But despite the fact that they haven't made investments in the summer, maybe the squad's not as strong as Brendan Rodgers would have liked, there needs to be a better showing in that early kickoff against Crystal Palace. They've got too much quality to be putting out performances like that. I know Palace are a decent side and people have lauded the way they play football this season, but they're a team that struggle for results. And I feel that Leicester, in the position that they're in, scrapping for points and results, that's a game that they should have won.
We haven't talked about the worst thing that happened in that game, which was James Maddison's dive, which was absolutely desperate. It was ludicrous. And he's booked now, so he doesn't play in the game. And he has been their best player over the course of the season so far. Let's just quickly talk about Brentford against Brighton. It was so long ago now, it's almost irrelevant. But not if you're a Brentford fan. Probably not if you're a Brighton fan, and certainly not if you're Ivan Toney.
Here he goes against Sanchez and beats him, and Brentford lead by 2-0. It's Toney again.
I think we are a very good team, and especially when we do these bits all the basics.
That will increase the noise surrounding a potential call-up for the World Cup squad. I remember when he scored a penalty in the playoff final many moons ago, Thomas Frank said to me on the side of the Wembley pitch, he is the best penalty taker in the world. Now, obviously, at the time, although I was impressed with his penalty taking because he'd done very well in the Championship, I was a bit like, all right, okay, let's not go over the top.
I think he probably is. And he reminds me a bit of Matt Le Tissier when he was at his pomp. You just knew that when Southampton won a penalty, Matt Le Tissier wasn't going to miss. I think he did miss one out of about 50 in his entire career. And it's the same with Ivan Toney. I was watching the game with my sons. As soon as they got a penalty, I said, Tony's in your fantasy team. Here's your first points of the weekend, because he just does not miss penalties. He has an incredible confidence and he makes it very difficult for the goalkeeper. It was a strange game, this one. I mean, typical Brighton game in many ways, because they dominated possession. They had decent openings, but they don't have a goal scorer. And if they really want to kick on to the next level, at some point, Tony Bloom, who's been a fantastic owner, is going to have to bite the bullet, and he's going to have to pay serious money for a number 9. If you put Scamacca in that Brighton team, for example, you're looking at European candidates.
Right, where are you going this week? What games are you going to this week, Alex?
Well, by the time this podcast is live, I'll be at the Valley for Charlton against Pompey. Scott Minto has sorted me out some nice tickets for that one. I'm at Brighton Forest on Tuesday. Big game for the home side. Need to win that. And then the South Coast Showdown. It's not a derby, but it is a big game for Southampton. They're at Bournemouth on Wednesday night.
Kweku, where are you at?
Later on today, I'm going to the Raheem Sterling Foundation, do some work with the kids down there. And then on Thursday, I'm at Stamford Bridge doing some content stuff for Chelsea. So
okay, enjoy it. I'll be going to Manchester United Newcastle on Wednesday night. The show comes from there. Round the Grounds Tuesday and Wednesday night on talkSPORT. Our next live game is Saturday, Nottingham Forest against Liverpool. We'll have a preview to that on the Thursday/Friday podcast. We think that will come out on Friday morning this week because, of course, there's games right the way up till Thursday night. Thank you for watching, for listening, for downloading. Make sure you tell all your friends about the GameDay podcast from talkSPORT, where you'll get a Crook prediction and a retraction all in the same 45 minutes. Make sure you join us Thursday.